Hello, singer friends. Happy Valentine's Day. I have a link to share with you right away. The link, I put it in the video description, but I will put it in the live chat as well. It's just a forum post from the 30 Day Singer site, so you should be able to access it no problem. I don't think you need to have an account or log in. To create an account is free if you do end up needing to do that. But anyways, head to that link. Let me know if you are here live. So, Sheila, maybe you can let me know if you can access that link and all as well. I'll be going over it, bit by bit. I just know that some people, myself included, like to have a visual reference. So, I have a private student to thank for kind of inspiring this lesson and helping me create this list. This is a student who is working on infusing emotion into their singing, and we've done some analysis of different voices that we both like and think do a good job conveying emotion, and this list is the result of that, of kind of breaking it down and thinking, okay, when you encounter a singer and they're impacting you emotionally and it sounds like they are also feeling that emotion, can we get specific with what the tools and techniques are that they're using? So, this is my best attempt. And of course, we can add to this together as well. So, if you open up that link, I will just run through it really quickly in case you don't have the link open. So, at the top, I have three song examples for today. We'll kind of bop between the three. I have Always by Irving Berlin, Danny Boy, and Someone to Watch Over Me. And then I have a list of these stylistic tools and techniques that I find are used quite widely with singers of any genre, any style. Some of them might be style specific, but the first kind of broad category is a dynamic or intensity. And so, first, think about when you're singing a song. And actually, let me take a step back. Before you even choose a song to sing, if you want to convey emotion when you're singing, it has to be a song that you connect with emotionally. If you are forcing it, if you can't relate to the lyrics, if you're just singing the words and you don't really know what you're singing about, that's not a good candidate for a song where you can really express emotion authentically. So that's really number one. And I didn't make it onto this list, but it's kind of a given that we have to choose a song we can relate to personally. And even if it's like we'll go through these songs together. There's there might be a little bit of acting involved. There might be a little bit of personal interpretation, and that is all great. But anyways, okay. So the first big group would be dynamic or intensity. So I would consider first, what's my overall dynamic or intensity going to be? Is it soft? Is it going to be speech level, as in just as loud as you talk? Is it going to be louder? In general, is this song going to be on the softer side, on the like conversational, speech level side, or is it going to be more intense? And then for each phrase or section, so a phrase just means a musical sentence. It could be a sentence in reality, or it could be a part of a sentence. So for each phrase or section, and when I say section, I mean maybe the verse or the chorus or the bridge, things like that. What's the dynamic arc? Meaning, are you staying at the same dynamic level? Are you growing in intensity? Meaning, are you getting louder? Are you getting softer? Oftentimes, there's going to be a bit of an ebb and flow or a push and pull. So, lots of sections you're going to grow and then come back down. A quick example of that in one of our songs would be Someone to Watch Over Me for the phrase, There's a saying old says that love is blind. I'm probably going to grow a little bit and then come back. There's a saying old says that love is blind. But that's not my only choice. I can also get louder the whole time. There's a saying old says that love is blind. And what does that do to the meaning? I could also do the opposite. I could start kind of, strong and then pull it back. There's a saying old says that love is blind. So play with that. See what actually ends up supporting the meaning that you're trying to convey. Okay, abrupt dynamic changes, meaning soft to loud all of a sudden, or you're loud and then you're really soft. So, for example, maybe I go, someone to watch over me. And I get really loud for watch, and then I bring it back really soft all of a sudden for over me. Hello, Joshua. Hi, Vishal. Thank you guys for being here. Still in dynamic and intensity. And if you are just joining, here is that link again. Accents, meaning, so an accent, you're just giving extra stress, or you're singing that or playing that a little bit louder than the surrounding words or syllables. So if we had an accent on, uh, there's a saying old says that love is blind. If we accented the word love, there's a saying old says that love is blind. Now, that felt forced to me, but we could probably find a better spot to accent a specific word to make it jump out from the text. Um, Onset for your dynamic or intensity. Onset isn't necessarily. It doesn't have to be linked to our dynamic, but it ends up being. So, onset means how do you start a note? How are you starting a note, especially if that note starts with a vowel? So, let's say we're singing the word I. Our default is going to be a balanced onset. I, meaning my breath flow and my vocal fold vibration, it's happening pretty much at the same time. It's seamless. I, but I have some other options. So those other options, I can also have a breathy onset, meaning I start with air. Another way to think about this is I start with an H. Hi, hi. Naturally, I'm going to be softer at the start when I have that breathiness. I can also have a glottal onset. The glottis is the space between your vocal folds. So a glottal onset or a glottal stop is when that space is closed up. Your vocal folds are together at the start. I, I. You could go pretty harsh with it. And really slam those vocal folds together. That's typically not what we want unless we're singing something kind of like pop punk and we really want that, accented onset. We don't want to do that all the time because again, it's a little bit harsh. But we could have a glottal onset or a glottal stop. An example of that is the word uh-oh. So if you say uh-oh, you're going to actually feel you don't have nerve endings in your vocal folds, but you'll kind of feel that stoppage of air. So right at the start when you say uh, you're going to feel something is closed before I make sound. Uh. And then between the and the o, you're going to feel again something is closing to stop my airflow. Uh oh. That's a good exercise to develop a little bit of awareness between your breath flow and your vocal folds. Okay, and then our last type of onset, so we had balance, that's just your basic breathy, glottal, I, and then fry onset means we're kind of sliding from vocal fry, which is this sound, I, and you can hear each of those onsets resulted in a slightly different tone quality for the duration of that word. So you can think about what comes to mind emotionally if I use a breathy onset. I might be shy or sad. With a glottal onset, I'm confident. I have something to say. With that fry onset, it's a little bit more casual, maybe tired, lazy, maybe. Okay, and then the last thing under dynamic intensity that I have is intentional voice cracks. And this is kind of related, and actually, Ugliest Beautiful Creation said, when you get to less intensity or fade out, it's good. But in my case, at the fade out section, my voice breaks like a vocal fry kind of thing. So if you find that that's happening, um, perhaps you can't go that quiet that quickly. If I just go, uh, there's a saying old says that love is blind, and I kind of lose my tone at the end there, then maybe that's a cue for me. I can't go quite that quiet that quickly. Okay, so last thing under dynamic and intensity is intentional voice cracks, our voice, breaking a little bit. An example that I really like from one of my pop flip lessons is in the song Wicked Game by Chris Isaac. He sings, No, I, and he lets his voice break. It's kind of like a yodel. So, an intentional voice crack or pop flip. If you want to learn a little bit more about that technique, I love it so much. I've done a few lessons on it. So let me grab at least one of those videos for you. Another artist who uses a lot of intentional voice cracks, but in a little bit of a different way, is Sia. You can hear her voice is like at the breaking point a lot of times. So there's one lesson on the pop flip if you're like, ooh, that sounded cool and I want to learn how to do that. Okay, so that was all under the dynamic and intensity umbrella. Next, we have rhythm and phrasing. So the first thing I have here is a little bit more, probably more familiar to you if you sing jazz or are interested in jazz. The first thing I have under that heading is swung versus straight eighth notes. So straight eighth notes would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and swung eighth notes. The first in each eighth note pairing has is held for a little bit longer and the second is shorter. So instead of 1 and 2 and equally divided, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you can hear that swinging kind of, feeling. Uh, Lots of jazz tunes have swung eighths. And thank you very much. So, anyways, you might think of that more as being a jazz vocalist thing, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. I could sing, "Oh, Danny boy," and those would just be straight eighth notes, da 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 da, or "Oh, Danny boy." Not quite swung, but I'm holding on to that first part of the word a little bit longer. Okay, phrasing. Where'd my phrasing go? There it is. Back phrasing. That means you're intentionally ahead of or behind the beat versus being right on the beat. So, an example, one of our song examples is Always by Irving Berlin. I'll be loving you always. That's as written. And by the way, you can click on that first link. I have the sheet music with the lyrics for you. So if you take a look at that first one, and you can download it, but it's just kind of in a viewer at first for Always. You make it a little bit bigger. To the beginning of the chorus, which is on actually the third page of the document. Okay, so we have I'll be loving you always with a love that's true. Always. That's me singing the song as written on the beat. Back phrasing is when I choose to be purposely ahead of or behind the beat. So, for example, instead of I'll be loving you, I could sing I'll be loving you always. So I was a little bit late on be loving you, and I had to speed up a little bit to catch up. And then always as well, I missed the downbeat and I sang a little bit later. So think about why Why might I do that? What kind of emotion am I conveying? What if I'm ahead of the beat instead of "I'll be loving you"? I could be "I'll be loving you." Maybe because I'm so excited to start loving this person that I can't even wait for the beat, that I, can't relax. um, so back phrasing is not just for jazz singers. Anytime you hear, for example, let's say you're used to the studio recording of Let It Be by the Beatles. And then when you hear them in a live version, they do something different, like they're late or they're early or just their rhythm in some way is different. That is an example of back phrasing. And then my last thing under rhythm and phrasing is where to breathe. And I see Sheila has potentially a question. Ah, Sheila is a jazz lover. Are there a lot of seven chords used in jazz? Traditionally, yes, absolutely. Um, we'll talk about what a seventh chord is for anyone who's like, what? But last question before I jump back to seventh chords is where to breathe. That's a really good thing to decide. And it helps you deliver the lyrics in a way that makes sense, right? Um, if I think about Danny Boy, I'm singing, "Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling," right? If I breathe right in the middle of that phrase, the pipes are calling, it interrupts what I'm saying. It takes you out of it for the moment. So I would rather breathe anytime there's a comma or a period or any kind of punctuation. That's a better place to breathe. So I could breathe after the word boy. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. I could even breathe after the first pipes because there is a comma there. Let's see what that sounds like. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. There's not a lot of space there to breathe, so I wouldn't necessarily choose to breathe there. Um, but anyways, going on, if I sang from glen to glen and down the mountainside versus from glen to glen and oh sorry, I sang that melody wrong. From glen to glen and down the mountainside. There's a little bit more urgency in that second one where I'm saying from glen to glen and down the mountainside versus from glen to glen, comma, pause, and down the mountainside. So the question of where to breathe is an important one, not only because you need breath as your fuel for singing, but also because it's going to impact the way that you sing that song, your phrasing, your dynamics. You might have noticed when I sang from glen to glen and down, I was able to grow a little bit to in that phrase. Whereas if I breathe in between it, it cuts my dynamic growth from glen to glen and down. I can't really crescendo through that phrase if I'm taking a breath right in the middle. Um, okay, so back to Sheila asked a question about seventh chords. Having are there a lot of seventh chords used in jazz? So very, very quickly, I will not spend a lot of time on this, but what is a seventh chord? You're adding the seventh scale degree. So let's take key of C. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And then the pattern repeats C, D, E, F, G. Okay. So a C major chord, we build using the first, third, and fifth scale degree. So the first is C, C, D, E, F, G. So C, E, and G. But if I kept walking up that scale, A is my sixth scale degree, B is my seventh scale degree. So now I'm going to play C, E, G, B. and there are many other different types of seventh chords. In fact, I did a live lesson just on seventh chords. So if you're interested, you can definitely check that out. But in general, seventh chords of scale are diminished chord or adding major seventh interval in the scale. So if you walk through, there's different types of sevenths we could have, or at least that are found in the key. So C major 7. I'm staying in the key of C for you, Vishal. D minor 7. That's D F A C. E minor 7. E G B D. F major 7. F A C E. G dominant 7. G B D F. A minor 7. A C E G. B diminished 7th, or really half diminished 7th. B D F A. And then that would repeat. So those aren't the only types of seventh chords you can have, but those are just the seventh chords that are naturally found using the pitches of the major scale. And again, I can grab that link for you if you are interested in learning and singing all kinds of major seventh chords. Okay, so moving right along, I navigated away from my that's okay. Miriam, don't worry about it. We're moving on. We're going back to how to add emotion to our singing. So after rhythm and phrasing, we have articulation. So first, I would say in general, and Jonah, I see your question. In general, our articulation when singing is usually legato. Legato just means smooth and connected. As a default, I'm going to sing, "Oh, Danny boy." I'm not going to go, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes," because that's more like speech. One of the things that makes singing singing is that we are sustaining. So I would say legato overall. Legato just means smooth and connected. And then I have two other types of phrasing that you could use for emphasis. One being staccato, meaning short and detached. And then the other being tenuto. If you've ever seen a piece of music and there's a little straight line over a single note or a couple different notes, that's tenuto, meaning you hold it for just a little bit longer. You kind of push on that note a little bit. So, for example, I'm going to sing a little bit of always with these different types of phrasing. So I could sing legato, "I'll be loving you always." If I sung that same line staccato, "I'll be loving you always." It doesn't fit at all, right? That would not be a good choice, in my opinion. But for another song and another mood, maybe. And then tenuto. Let's say I add a tenuto onto loving. "I'll be loving you." So I'm holding love of loving just a little bit longer. I'm adding a little extra stress on it. Okay, Jonah is asking, how can I sing with happy emotions without sounding like I'm sleeping? It happens when I try it. So, Jonah, I would say the first thing to do if you want to sing and add a bit of happiness into your sound is literally to smile. It's very difficult to convey happiness when my face is like this. So, if I go, "I'll be loving you always," versus this time I'm going to smile and I'm going to think about the person that's making me so happy. "I'll be loving you always." You can hear the difference. You can really hear when a singer is smiling when they sing versus when they're not. So that's very quickly how I would go about that. Okay, I did want to look up that seventh chords live lesson. So let me do that really quickly before I forget. And then we're on to our next heading. Okay, singing seventh chords. Here you go. There that is in the chat. And I'm also going to take a drink of water. You're welcome, Jonah. Two more big headings, and then we'll kind of go through these songs a little bit more. Diction or pronunciation? So, a question to ask yourself when you're singing is, how percussive are my consonants? Am I singing really fluidly? So, for example, "Mm, everything went wrong, and the whole day long I'd feel so blue." This actually isn't a good example for percussive consonants, but let me just see what it sounds like if I pronounce those consonants a little bit more clearly. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long I'd feel so blue. So I sound a little bit more, I would say, intentional if I'm sinking into those consonants a little bit more. The songs that I chose today are, kind of emotional, sweeter songs. And Cookie saying that's what I have a problem with the most is the diction. So I'll tell you, Cookie, I would say if you are a classical singer, you care a lot about diction. If you're a musical theater singer, you also care a lot about diction, just meaning pronunciation and enunciation, because you are furthering the story. You have words that you really want your audience to hear. As a pop singer, you don't need to worry as much about diction. And in fact, I have a student right now who comes from a choral or choir background, and that's one of my encouragements to her is to care less about diction. Um, because she is, oh, that's just a mason jar. um, she is used to singing with very, very proper diction. So, for example, if I'm singing, someone to watch over me, and I go, "There's a saying old says that love is blind. Still, we're often told, seek and ye shall find." Versus, let me relax it a little bit. There's a saying old says that love is blind. Still, we're often told, seek and ye shall find. You can probably still understand me, but I sound more casual, more conversational. So Cookie saying, I'm a pop and R&B singer. So yeah, definitely. Diction, it shouldn't be the last thing on your mind, but like it's pretty low on the list. I would worry a lot more about stylization and tone. Carl's asking, what about a country singer? Country is an interesting example because I wouldn't say that diction is necessarily the most important thing in the world. However, because a lot of country music is sung with a Southern accent, a little bit of a twang, you end up you end up paying attention to the diction more because of that accent. But are they necessarily trying to really make sure you understand every single one of those words that they sing? I think less so than a musical theater or a classical singer because it's conversational kind of storytelling. Um, so yeah, that is an interesting example. I would still say in general, I would more value my stylization, my tone, which does involve that kind of twangy sound. Um, yeah, and I would say in order to really sink into that country style, your accent or your pronunciation is gonna be a part of it, but it's not necessarily like, "Let's speak very properly and make sure everyone can understand every syllable we say." Okay, another big one, and this is one that you can look at, when you are watching a singer singing live, is their mouth posture. Is their mouth relatively open, relatively closed, or does it kinda just look like they're talking, just very casually? Um, I would say that most beginning singers, this is, generalization, but most beginning singers don't open their mouths very much, but they think they are. It feels like they're opening their mouth a lot, but then they go and look in a mirror and they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess I'm not." So it can be very instructive for you to sing in front of a mirror and see how open is my mouth, and then watch a truly live performance, not a pre-taped or one where the singer is just singing over a track, but try to look for a truly live performance, mistakes and all, and see how open is their mouth. Great example would be Whitney Houston singing I Will Always Love You, or singing the national anthem. If you take a look at how tall her mouth is, and of course, every body is different. You might not have to open your mouth quite that tall. Maybe you need to open it even taller or wider, but it's very, very instructive and informative to take a look at, okay, how much space do these singers really need for these pitches? And if I'm struggling, that could be why. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you take a look at singers like Billie Eilish or Ariana Grande when she's singing really low and casually, and they're not moving their mouth all that much, you know? Their mouth is relatively closed and it helps give them that kind of casual sound. So, mouth posture, important. Um, I'll go back to diction because I want to answer a few questions quickly. Um, Nick was saying, what about a rock singer in terms of diction? Again, I would say it's less important. Like think about it. Can you understand perfectly every word that a singer is singing in a song? Or do you need to look up the lyrics and you're like, "Oh, that's what they're saying." um, I know for me, if I'm thinking about, you know, if I'm thinking about some well-known rock songs, I don't know all the words. I know the chorus pretty well. The rest of it, I'm like, I don't know. This is kind of what it sounds like. I don't know what the words are. um, so I would say again, diction is less important. And Miriam, your teacher is important, or your teacher is right that diction is important, but not as much for pop. Like, you don't really even have to believe me. Just take a listen to different pop singers and ask yourself, are they enunciating really clearly or are they pretty casual with their pronunciation? And that's your answer. That's it. So if you take a look at Billie Eilish, Sia, Ariana Grande, a lot of times they're really not, you know, right now I'm in a state of no, right now I'm in a state of mind. It's not clear choral diction. That's my point. Um, and Vishal is asking, on opening your mouth for a higher pitch, it gets louder. Um, yeah, it can. I would say lower pitches, it depends on the singer. For me, I do better for lower pitches with my mouth in a more closed position. But singers with low, big, heavy voices tend to do better opening their mouth into like an ah or shape. So just play with it. See what works better for you. Play with the different vowel shape and mouth opening. Okay, finishing up diction really quick. Softening certain consonants. This kind of goes along with, how clear is our diction. And then also vowel color being a little bit brighter versus a little bit darker. When I use those words, bright vowels sound like E, A. There's a bright quality there. Dark vowels would be vowels like oo, o, even ah. Here's the difference. So yeah, very bright, kind of forward sounding in your face versus dark, kind of back here. Ooh, ah. So ask yourself, what kind of vowel color suits the song best? So I could sing the same song. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. So that's with brighter vowels. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling. Versus if I try to make it a little bit darker. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling, calling instead of calling. Um, it gives a little bit of a different emotional quality there. Bright, generally, I would say we're in a happier mood. Darker, we're in like a sad or somber or reflective mood. And then Miriam is asking, what about diction in gospel music? That's a really good question. I would say diction might be slightly more important if you are singing gospel music and you're leading a congregation. You want them to hear what you're saying because oftentimes you're signaling like this is what we're about to sing, or if you're in a gospel choir, you want your audience to understand what you're saying. But I would just, I'm not the end all be all authority on this. Just listen to different singers that you like in these genres and ask yourself that question. Ask yourself, um, does it seem like they're valuing really crisp, clear diction, or does it seem like they're valuing the style a little bit more? And when I do my best impression of this singer, what kind of diction do I end up with? Do I end up with kind of casual conversational diction, or is it pretty clear? And that can also be an answer for you rather than singing the song just like you would sing it. Try to listen carefully for that and reflect back, or meaning, mimic or imitate exactly what you hear that singer doing. And sometimes this takes a little bit of practice. I'll do that with my private students. I'll screen share a YouTube video and I'll ask them, okay, what's the singer actually saying? Because they're not, let's say they're not saying the word breathing. Just keep breathing and no, they're saying, just keep breathing and breathing, breathing and breathing, not breathing or breathing. Okay, it'll be very obvious to you if you listen for that and then do your best to mimic. Um, and Vishal is saying, but opening my mouth will never get me to head voice. So that's not true. Your mouth can be very open in head voice, but in the beginning, if you're a very, very beginning singer, then a sound like ooh, ooh would probably be easiest to get you into head voice. Ooh. But I can stay in head voice on a very open vowel. Ooh, ah. It's a little bit louder, but it's still head voice. Um, the voice is very, very flexible that way. Okay, and last thing I want to say, improvisation. I'm trying to conflate the word improvising and improvisation. Um, it's another way to infuse more emotion into your singing, um, because you're making it your own. So, one way is varying the rhythm. This kind of goes along with the concept of back phrasing from before. But you don't have to sing a song exactly as the original artist sang it. You don't. You can make it your own. So varying the rhythm, meaning holding on to one word for a little bit longer, or taking your time and then coming in a little bit late. Changing just one pitch at a time. I know it's scary to jump straight into improvisation, but it could be as simple as I'm just going to change one pitch. So instead of singing, I'm gonna go forward in the song because I've been using the beginning of these songs. So let's say I'm going, I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I'll change just one note. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. Okay, maybe you love that, maybe you hate it, but it's just starting to get you out of the box of what you know the melody to be. And that's a really, really important step if you want to make a song your own and start to improvise. Emphasize a specific word or phrase by varying the melody. So again, that means you're varying the rhythm and or varying the pitches in order to emphasize a certain phrase. Text painting. So, this is a concept I remember learning in music history class in college. And the idea is whatever the text says, you do that with your voice. And in the context of music history, it was like the composer intended it to be that way. So if we're talking about, ascending to the heavens, the melody would keep getting higher. Um, but you can do that as a singer. Let's say your lyrics are kind of growing in intensity or urgency. Your voice should also grow in intensity or urgency, or at least it can. Another cool effect is you can do the opposite. You can talk about being really loud and, mad or whatever it is, and be really quiet with your voice and kind of think about what that does emotionally. It's a little bit unsettling, right? When you know someone is really mad, but their voice is really quiet. Scary. And then my last little tip for you under the oh my goodness, I keep wanting to say improvisation, but I wrote improvising. Um, is during the instrumental sections, so maybe it's the intro or an interlude of some kind, just kind of hum along or sing some oohs. Ideally, you're singing something that fits well with the chords. You'll find it. You'll hear if you sing something and it clashes with the chord. But that's another way to start yourself toward improvisation. Um, in a very low key way, especially when you're just humming. Um, okay, so I would love to go back and sing through some of these songs with you a little bit, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to go into Q&A, and if that takes us to the end of our hour, then cool. Otherwise, I'll go back and sing some of these songs a little bit more for you. Ugliest Beautiful Creation says, I have two have a similar issue. My max volume seems to be constrained as if it's being suppressed. Any way to open up at higher notes and be confident? Sure. So I would say if it feels like, well, number one, it's important to know that different voices do have different volumes just naturally. You might have a friend who's really quiet and a friend who's really loud. And that's okay. It's okay if your voice is a little bit on the quieter side. Um, but if it feels like you do have more to give, you just are unable to, technique wise, I would say first, depending on the range, remind yourself. Um, Remind yourself how loud you can be when you're not singing. And just as an exercise, like give yourself a nice big hey, like across the room. I'll come off the mic, but hey, hey. Okay? It's a little bit shouty, maybe annoying, but try that. Just see what your body naturally does to make a big loud sound and remind yourself, "Okay, that's the same instrument. It's my vocal folds." And when I was saying that loud "hey" across the room, I felt my belly engage. I felt my belly turn on to help support that. Um, so first, remind yourself that you are capable of making big sounds. Your body knows how to do that. It's, a survival instinct to make loud sounds sometimes. Another thing that you can do that I really like this, instead of thinking about creating a loud sound, it's letting sound out. So, one way I really like to tap into this feeling is placing my hands on my low back so that I can feel my back ribs expand. Breathe in, feel that expansion, and just let it out. And again, breathe in. And this time, I want you to just exhale on a like a sigh. So just make some noise on your exhale. Nice inhale, low. Exhale. Now that's a lot of sound. It's not terribly loud, but it's a lot of sound there. Can you start to vocalize with that same feeling and that same intention of I'm letting sound out that's already inside me instead of I'm squeezing and constricting myself in order to make a louder sound? Okay, so what were those tips Remind yourself of how your body naturally makes bigger sounds by calling across the room. Pay attention to what it feels like in your body. Think about letting sound out rather than squeezing and pushing to make a bigger sound. I have many more tips on this that I think would be better suited for you to go and watch that other live lesson. So let me find that quickly for you. I think it was called, yeah, How to Strengthen Your Voice. So we talk about the vocal folds and we talk about our breathing muscles. So if you want, there you go. There's another hour-long live lesson for you. Okay, Sheila is saying changing one pitch. Is that pitch a part of the scale? How can you accomplish that? Practice, practice, practice. So, Sheila, I would say your safest bet is to choose a pitch that does belong in the scale, but it doesn't necessarily need to belong in the scale if the chord itself doesn't belong in the scale. So, let's see if I can find an example of that. I'm going to look up someone to watch over me, the chords. The chords aren't on this PDF, so I will just look up the chords separately. Good, you are so welcome. Yeah, okay. Someone to watch over me, chords. There's a is it that low? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. Okay, so that example right there. There's a somebody I'm in the key of E flat right now. On longing, I have an A flat chord, which does belong in the key. Longing. And then it goes A flat diminished to see. So, example there, Sheila, would be longing to see, longing to see. I'm choosing that B natural as my one pitch different, and it doesn't technically belong in the key of E flat, but it does belong in that chord. So I would say that's more important, is choosing a pitch that sounds good with the chord, not necessarily that is found in the scale. However, when you're trying this on a pretty basic pop song or even just, yeah, I was going to say a basic jazz tune, but even the most basic of jazz tunes usually have chords and pitches that don't belong in the key. So, um, but yeah, if you were trying this with an easy, 4 chord pop song, you wouldn't really run into that issue quite as much. And you could think about it as just another pitch within the scale. Jonah had a question. It happens to me that when I reach G4, my highest note for now, because I'm almost 17, I lose emotions, even though doing straw phonation. So, Jonah, depending on your vocal range or your voice type, it sounds like that could be the point at which you're encountering a register shift. So, you're going maybe from more of a chest voice or a thicker vocal fold um, condition to more thin fold or head voice. So tell me if that's what you mean. If you're singing and it's loud and it's loud and it's big, and then you get to G4 or above and your voice kind of loses power because you have to flip into head voice there. Tell me if that's what you're encountering. Vishal is saying the biggest question for me is how to find the right pitch for words or in a line in songs so I can practice that on the keyboard. So, Vishal, the easiest way to go about doing that is to choose songs that have sheet music for them. So, the few examples I gave today, I included the sheet music for you. But let's look up a popular song from today. So let's look up, like, if you're singing Easy on Me by Adele, if you include Easy on Me or whatever the song is, and Jonah, I'll get back to you. Whatever the song is, include sheet music and PDF in your search. And the nice thing, a website that I often will go to is sheetmusic-free.com. And you'll often find great PDFs there. Thank you, Sheila. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Um, so I'm going to sheetmusic-free.com. I'm getting Easy on Me sheet music by Adele. So the question, Vishal, is do you know how to read sheet music, or is that not a skill you have yet? It's really that's the skill that you need in order to be able to fill in the gaps. The issue, like if we tried to do this without sheet music, what we would need is the surefire knowledge that you can hear a melody by ear and then find it on the piano. So let's say you hear Adele singing Easy on Me, and you can just by ear going, and then you would know by ear C, D, F, F, C, D, F. But lots of people, unless you've been singing or playing piano for a long time, lots of people won't know that. So sheet music has all the information that you need. Thank you, Tyler. Um, I, for some reason, my internet is being slow getting this sheet music. Okay, so Vishal, if you cannot read sheet music, that's your first step, is to just start getting the tools to read sheet music. I recommended this book to someone the other day. It's pretty inexpensive on Amazon. When I last looked, it was about $15, and I'm sure you could get it used as well. So it is How to Read. Oh, there it was. It popped up in my history. How to Read Music in 30 Days. It's not connected to 30 Day Singer, but it's just, someone else using the 30-day hook. Music Theory for Beginners with Exercises and Online Audio. So I see a paperback version for $14.95. I see some used versions from around $10. The link here. This is not an ad for this book. It's just probably the most cost efficient way to learn how. You could also look up apps that teach you how to read music. My guess is that the best apps are going to be paid. And, for me, I would rather have a book to work through with exercises. But if you're more of an app person or an online program person, then that's cool too. A completely free option is musictheory.net. And they do have apps. Yes, exactly. So the sheet music shows you, although you need the music theory knowledge to be able to decode it, but that is what sheet music is it shows you what pitches exactly are being sung. So once you learn, for example, where those different pitches are on the staff and what the different clefs mean and what different key signatures mean, then you'll be able to take a look at that and play. And you wouldn't have needed to hear the song, you would just be able to decode that. So yeah, musictheory.net, completely free. I would recommend getting a book or looking into apps that people recommend highly for learning how to read sheet music. That's the best way. Um, Okay, and then back to Jonah. Jonah was saying, yes, I get a lot of cracks in that range. Okay, so Jonah, the thing to do, I know it's probably not what you want to do, but the thing to do is to work on your head voice, to spend time singing in head voice and not just avoid that range because that's the range in which you're cracking. Um, Cookie, do I have daily tips on improving your singing voice? The closest thing I have to daily is on TikTok. And that's not exactly daily, but it's probably 3 to 5 times a week. So that's yeah, that's where I'm most active, to be honest. So you can check that out. Okay, where were we? We were talking about head voice and eventually developing a balancer blend of your chest and head voice function in that G4, A flat 4, A4, B4 range. Um, so I have a couple lessons to share with you. Yeah, yeah, it's going to open up so many songs and so much of your vocal range. I can relate to you 100%, Jonah, because when I was first singing, I did not like my head voice. It was obviously I didn't like cracking. I didn't like how weak it was. I didn't like the sound, and I just avoided it. And it did not get any better because I was avoiding it. I wasn't using that coordination or those muscles. Um, so let me look up head voice. Thanks, Tyler. You'll enjoy it. Okay, so this is head voice and falsetto exercises for male singers. Female singers can also do this. Um, and again, Vishal, I would check out this tutorial that I just linked to, or a live lesson that I just linked to. If you are a person who only sings in chest voice and you reach just a ceiling or a breaking point, first step is accessing your head voice and using it all the time. I know you're not going to like it. I hated it too, but it's just the only way. Um, and then after a while, when you're comfortable getting in and out of head voice, um, then you can start to work with your mix or start to work on your mix. And here is my most recent live lesson on that. Okay. Um, Gaia's music is saying, I want to sing like Dua Lipa. She has a rich and smoky voice. She's a mezzo. I'm a soprano. So, Gaia, I would say most of Dua Lipa's music is very chest voice centric. So I would, as a soprano, you're going to have to kind of put on your alto hat because she might be a mezzo, but she definitely sings in alto range for the majority of her songs. And she uses a heavy, thick fold, very speaking voice kind of setup for her singing. So if I were you, I would spend probably a little bit more time than you might otherwise in your chest voice. So think, slightly heavier sounds, wider vowels, and really just speech like. Um, Especially if you're a soprano or you have a lighter tone quality and you're used to spending more time in head voice or a head dominant mix, it it's probably going to feel like you're just talking on pitch. Um, let's see if I have anything on chest voice specifically for you. Okay, so I have how to find your chest voice, and of course, that has a bunch of exercises in there, so you can check that out. Elisa is saying, when I want to sing, I should choose something between emotions and sounding powerful. Unfortunately, I can't handle them both together. Which one would be better if I practice? Or good question. Um, oh man, Nick, good question as well. So Elisa, hmm, can't quite sing emotionally and powerfully at the same time. I think I understand that. Then I think keeping it separate for a while. So think about your songs that you connect to emotionally. Those can be a little bit softer, and then the powerful songs, maybe they're just fun songs. So example would be like um, "Tonight We Are Young" by Fun, something like that, where it's not super emotional, but you get a chance to sing big and powerfully. That's my best advice for you right now. Um, Nick is saying, what general tips do you have for moments just before recording a duet? The question first is, are you recording it with the other person or are you recording separately? Um, but I would say, in general, before recording, um, I would try to get myself in whatever headspace that song requires, so kind of setting the scene, imagining the person or the character that you're singing to, um, as much as possible, like, forgetting the fact that there's a microphone in front of you and imagining that you're just singing in open air, with the other person. Yeah, so I also might determine ahead of time, like, how much eye contact and interplay are you going to be having? Because if you're a person who wants to have a lot of eye contact and the other person is, like, just eyes up here, like, looking at the audience the whole time, that can be a little bit awkward, like a bit of a disconnect. So I would also ask the other person, like, what are some moments you think would be appropriate for us to be singing to each other? And then when are we going to like more play out toward the audience if this is, a live situation? But even if you're just recording, you could determine that. But yeah, I think those are my two best tips is just as much as possible, pretend like the mic isn't there, that you're singing, to an audience beyond, and set the scene ahead of time. Um, Gaia says, I'm imagining Harry Styles sitting in my living room, looking at me. Hey, if that helps you sing better, then fantastic. Um, all right, my friends, I need to let you go, but I will see you next week. And actually, for Vishal and anyone else who's interested about, you know, music theory type things, our lesson next week will be on that for beginners. So I will see you then. Have a happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy.